Information without application is procrastination. Now, I know what you may be thinking. You're like, if I could just learn this one thing, then I'd be able to move forward with confidence. If I just sign up for another course, if I just listen to another podcast, if I just study more and more YouTube videos, and I'll finally have what it takes to move forward. I just feel like I'm missing this one thing. But the truth is, you already have it. More than likely, if you're watching this video, you are probably an information hoarder. You have a habit of researching as much as you possibly can in a genuine effort to feel more confident and to learn, but you haven't moved into that application stage. You think by hoarding and collecting all of this information that it's actually bringing you closer to your goal, but really what it's doing is it's frying your brain. You can't even move forward because you feel like you're always missing something. You feel like the more you research, the more tools you'll have in your arsenal, but really it's the thing that's holding you back. It's that constant searching for the next best thing. But what if I told you that you already have enough to move forward? This video is for those who have been wanting to move forward. You know what God has put on your heart to do, and you just keep making these mental excuses. And it may not feel like an excuse, right? You may genuinely feel like, I need this thing. But the thing about when God calls you to do something is that He's the one that called you to do it. You didn't call yourself, you didn't give yourself this idea, which means that everything that you need, when God gave it to you, He gave you enough to get started. I was just recently reading the story of Gideon again in Judges chapter 6. And when the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "Mighty warrior, God is with you." In another translation, it says, "Oh, brave man, God is with you." And Gideon begins to respond to the angel, and he says, if the Lord is with us, then why are all these bad things happening? And then the angel of the Lord completely overlooks his question because he knows that the real reason that they're in this situation is because of, Israel's disobedience. But the next thing that he says in that passage of scripture, after Gideon says that he cannot move forward because he is the least in his family, he's the youngest in his family out of all the families in Israel is considered the least, right? But the Lord tells him to go with the strength that he has. And then he says, "For I am the one who is sending you." And so I realized from that passage of scripture is that it's not the Lord disqualifying us from the things that He's called us to do. When He planted the idea, He said, okay, I'm giving this to you now because there's something that I already put in you that is enough for you to move forward. But what we like to do is we like to say that when the idea is given to us, it's on us to bring it forward. So let me go pull from all of these sources. Let me go pull from all of these experts to show me how to move forward with what God has called me to do. But what if the thing that God is calling you to do, He doesn't want you to do it like everyone else? But what if the thing that God is calling you to do, He wants to do it in a unique way? What if He doesn't want you taking someone else's blueprint and moving forward with that? What if He doesn't want you to absorb all of this information, right? What if He just wants you to seek Him as the source? What if He wants you to get still and be quiet and document the blueprint and the instructions that He's giving you, right? This is something that you really have to think about because, again, the reason why we absorb so much information, the reason why we feel like we need to go to YouTube University and Google University for hours and hours and hours is because we feel like on our own we are not enough, right? We feel like we're not adequate enough to move forward. And the truth is, sometimes we're not. Sometimes our gifting and our talent and the things that come natural to us are not enough to move forward with what God has called us to do. And that's for a reason. The thing about when God places an idea on your heart is that it requires your total dependence on Him to bring it to pass. Whereas in the world, if you get an idea, you can just kind of move forward, hit the ground running and it be okay. But the reason why the Lord plants an idea is because it's a solution to a problem. And in order for you to solve that problem, you have to seek Him along the way. And you also sometimes have to go forward knowing that the information that He's given you is enough. God never gives an idea without giving a first step or a first instruction. And sometimes you may get the idea when you're driving, or you may have had the idea stored in your notebook for years, but the missing piece is seeking the Lord for those steps. He may not give you the entire blueprint, which is why we can kind of go into panic mode when we don't have all the right steps and the in between. And that's when we start information hoarding. But really the key is to just be obedient step by step. So that information, right, all that information that you've collected, it's good, right? It's good to build your awareness of something that you're not necessarily familiar with, right? If God is calling you into a new industry, if he's calling you to start a YouTube channel and you've never spoken on a mic before, or you don't know how YouTube works, right? Or if he's calling you to launch a faith-based business and you're in a 9-to-5 and you've never done anything entrepreneurial, right? It's okay to get some information, but the real information should be coming from the Lord. And you have to do it with the idea in mind that it is the Lord who is calling you to do this thing. So he has the answers. Now, along the way, he may connect you to a mentor, or he may connect you to a coach or a strategist that will help you along the way. But essentially in those beginning stages, when you are getting the idea and you're trying to move forward, you have got to seek the Lord about those things. It's not going to be done in your own strength. Now, one thing I really want to focus on about, moving forward with something that God has called you to do is you don't need a complicated system to do what God is calling you to do. Again, when God is calling you to do something, your process is going to be different than the average person. It may take somebody in the world a year in all these complicated systems and proven strategies to bring something forward, right? But when God is telling you to do something, he may give you the most simplest instruction that doesn't make sense to anybody else, but it's the thing that's going to move you forward. So you need to stop searching for this overcomplicated system. Sometimes the instructions from the Lord are the most simple, remedial, basic thing. And you'd be like, what does this have anything to do with what you're calling me to do? But if it came from the Lord, who is the source of all wisdom, then who are we to judge it? Who are we to go outside of him and try to say, oh, you know what, that seems so simple, so I'm just not going to do it? Who are we to say that when the Lord is the source of all knowledge? He's the source of wisdom. Some of you right now are sitting on an instruction that the Lord gave you because you feel like it's too simple to actually work. You feel like, oh, this doesn't even make any sense, so I'm not going to do it. But the truth is that very thing that you're sitting on, right? The thing that makes you feel like it's not going to work is the very thing that's going to move you forward. So stop looking for the next best strategy. Stop looking for the next best system to help move you forward and start using what you already have. Again, it's very easy. Like I said, sometimes you can get in a phase where you feel like you need inspiration, and that's okay. But too much information can quickly turn into decision paralysis where you're very overwhelmed. And so you have to be mindful and ask yourself, what do I already have that can help me to move forward? What are the solutions that God has already placed in my life that I can use right now to get me to where he's called me to be? You don't need something complicated. If you even study the Bible, God never really uses complicated strategies to move somebody forward in what he's called them to do. I believe it was a story about, I think it was King Jehoshaphat, don't quote me, but I think it was King Jehoshaphat, and he was going to war, and it looked like his enemies were outnumbering him. And so basically he began to pray and fast to the Lord, and the Lord gave him an answer, told him that they would have victory. But the strategy for them was to march forward. They put the worshipers in the front, and they began to praise and worship. And as they began to praise and worship, right, this is a skilled, trained army. But as they began to praise and worship the Lord began to fight their enemies. They began to send confusion amongst their enemies, and they won the battle. So it wasn't them fighting. It wasn't some strategic warfare strategy. It was literally them following the instruction of the Lord. So again, whether it makes sense or not, sometimes it's the simple things that move you forward, and that's often how God works. If it was a complicated strategy or system that brought you forward, then how would the Lord get glory from that? If you use some type of complicated system or tool or strategy to move you forward and to win the battle, then when you actually walked into that thing, right, when you finally reached your goal, who would you give the credit to? You probably give the credit to your system. You would say, it's this system or it's this tool or it's this information that allowed me to complete this goal versus the strategies that God has given you. So again, do not overlook simple instructions. And another thing, there is no point of learning something new if you haven't done anything with the last set of information that you learned. This is for people who are spending hours and hours collecting research. Every time somebody asks you, have you moved forward, your response is usually, oh, I'm still looking at this thing, or I'm still working on this thing, or I'm still researching to try to figure it out. Trying and doing are not the same thing. And I think that hoarding information and researching without actually implementing is a form of comfort for us, but it's not actually doing. You can try to do something all day, but it's not the same thing as doing. Doing is saying, you know what, I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but I'm going to actually apply what I've learned. Trying is in your head, right? Eventually, I'm going to try to go to the gym. I'm going to try to start a YouTube channel, but you have not actually done anything. Doing is saying, I'm about to record this video and I have no idea how it's going to work out, but I'm going to do those things. So don't get so comfortable with the idea of trying and start doing. Do the last thing that God told you to do. You're so busy praying, God, give me a strategy. God, give me the next thing you want me to do. But you have not done the last thing he told you to do. Why would he give you a new set of instruction and you haven't obeyed the last one? And again, if you're in that place and you're thinking, well, the last thing that God told me to do doesn't make any sense, it does not matter. What God does is not going to make sense to you, but it does not mean that you should not move forward. So if you're in that place and you're like, you know what, Kyla, I hear you. I have been hoarding all this information. I've been sitting on the last thing God told me to do. I've been searching for the next best thing instead of using what's in my hands. But I've been doing it so long, I really don't know how to get out of this place. I want you to ask yourself these couple of questions. You can write them down, and I really recommend taking this into your quiet time and just sitting in God's presence, but ask yourself these questions. The first question is, what do I need to do? Remind yourself of that thing that God has put on your heart to do, right? What do I need to do? And write it down. Write that goal out, write that idea out, whatever it is, write it down. The second question is, what do I need to do it? Again, writing these things out may seem very basic, but it's going to jog your memory to the things that you actually need to move forward. Sometimes what you think you need is not what you need, and so you need to write it down so you can see clearly, okay, what are the missing pieces? What do I already have in my inventory, and what are the things that I need? So you can get a very, very clear picture. The third thing that you need to ask yourself is, how long is it going to take me to do it? Be realistic. If God is calling you to start a YouTube channel, it does not take a year. It does not take 6 months to start a YouTube channel, especially the way that God is going to call you to do it. Because if he's called you to YouTube or to speak or whatever, then he's already giving you something to speak about. Now, it may not be something you feel comfortable speaking about, but whatever it is that the Lord has put on your heart, it's necessary, right? Because your life is not about you. The things that he's called you to do are not about you. So how long is it going to take you to do what God told you to do? At least that first step. If you can't figure out the whole thing, how long is it going to take me to do the last thing that God called me to do? Write it down. The fourth question is, what do I need to put down to make more time for what God has called me to do? Sometimes you have way more time than you think. I know a lot of you work a 9 to 5 and you're probably very overwhelmed after you get home, and it's probably just like, I just want to rest, girl. I just want to watch TV all day and I'm tired. I get it. But when God is calling you to do something, he's not asking. He's not saying, hey, can you please make some time to work on this thing? It would be really nice if you would do that. This is God we're talking about. This is God who places solutions to problems in your hands, right? He's not asking. When he gives you something, it is a responsibility that you have to execute it. So you need to start asking yourself, what do I need to put down so that I can make more time for what God is calling me to do? And the last question is, what obstacles are preventing me from doing what I need to do? These can be things like lack of energy, lack of motivation, not enough time, but all of those things, those obstacles, they can be solved, right? Sometimes we are like, oh, like we have these obstacles and it's just, this is the reason why I haven't moved forward. Any obstacle that's in front of you can be solved. It may not be solved in the way that you think, but you can ask the Lord, what do I need to do to move this obstacle out the way? So sit down and take 10 minutes to answer these questions. I'll leave a worksheet that you can download for free that has all these questions and space for you to answer it if that will be helpful. But take the time to do this because, again, information without application is procrastination. You are not doing yourself any favors by hoarding information and not moving forward what God is calling you to do. When God called you to do something, he already took into account what's going on in your life. He took into account your schedule, the things that you're facing, and guess what? what? It didn't stop him from downloading it to you. Why? Because it's a solution. It's not about you. It's the thing that God has called you to do, that he's trusted you with, and it's a responsibility of you to move forward. So I hope this has been helpful. What you have is more than enough. If God can use Gideon with an army of 300 to defeat an enemy of 200,000, he can surely use the simple instruction that he gave you, or the information that you've been keeping for years. Don't limit what God can do, and stop overcomplicating things. Again, you can click the link in the description box below to go ahead and download that worksheet that has those 5 questions and really sit down and do it. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you guys on the next video.